So, first of all, let us have a look at what innovation actually is. Therefore, we have a look at, first of all, what is the main difference between an invention and an innovation. Then we have a look at what are different types of innovations that we know. So where can we be innovative and where does it come from? Then we want to dive deep into what is the relationship between innovation success and firm performance. So does innovation actually pay off? And last but not least, what are the drivers of innovation success? So let's start with defining what differs an invention from an innovation. These definitions are a little bit boring, I know. However, one of the most frequent reasons of misunderstandings within companies is that people talk about different things when using the term innovation. So therefore, it is important that we actually define what we mean by invention, what we mean by innovation, so that actually we really all talk about the same. So in simple terms, some talk about having a great idea and think they are innovative, but that is clearly not the case. Or a different example is there are a lot of measures out there to boost invention, but if you do not take care of making an invention an innovation, which requires a completely different set of tools, then actually all your efforts for inventing something is for nothing. So therefore, start with defining what differs invention from innovation. So let's start with what an invention is. The invention is an event where you as an R&D professional or as a technician or as an inventor actually solve a problem for the first time. So you find a technical solution for an existing problem for the first time. This is what is called an invention. To make an invention becoming an innovation, it requires that this invention is actually successfully introduced on the market so that it is commercialized. So you need a first customer that buys this invention. Then it becomes an innovation. If it's an internal invention, for instance, for your improvement of a manufacturing process, then it requires this invention to be implemented in your manufacturing process, in your machines, in your equipment. And when it's first used for the first time, then actually this invention became an innovation. And that's the most important differentiation between the two, because inventing something and innovating something requires totally different tools and methods. Let's continue with the characteristics of innovation, or you might also refer to this as answering the question, what differs innovation from other routine activities that happen within the company? Yeah, like in the sales process or in the manufacturing process, where something that is already there is just replicated over and over. When it comes to innovation, one of the main characteristics, which does not really come as a surprise, is its newness. So it means that there is a new mean-end combination, or you might also say a new problem-solution combination that is introduced. And so you might have a new solution for an existing problem, or there are new problems that you learn about that your customers have, and you provide a new solution to that. So this is what is characterized as newness. And this newness can be on a continuum from very incremental, so more of the same. So it's just your computer you're sitting in front of, or your tablet computer, or whatever it is, and it comes in a new color. So this is really just a very, very small incremental innovation. It is just a color change. There's no change in technology or in features really, except that it has a different aesthetic profile. And then there is this other end of the continuum, which is radically new. So if you have something that is radically new, It doesn't draw on existing technologies, it has a new technology. It doesn't address existing markets because there are totally new customers that are addressed with that, and so on and so forth. And this evaluation, if something is more incremental or radically new, depends on the subject that is actually evaluating this. So everybody of us has a different knowledge. Some are more technology affine than others. Some know more in certain areas than others, and so on and so forth. So the perception if something is rather incrementally new or radically new depends heavily on the subject that evaluates this. Also, from a company perspective, if you as a company work in an industry such as, I don't know, Apple, and they are producing and designing their computers and their mobile phones, and then they are entering the content business by producing their own TV series and running their own channel, this, from Apple's perspective, is really radically new because it's a totally shift away from their existing hardware and software business, now creating content. However, in a different industry, such as in the broadcasting industry, where you find all these broadcasting companies and also these streaming companies like Netflix, for them, producing a new series is not really something new. It's basically what they do all the time. So this example should show you that while something might be innovative and very radically new for one company, it might not be so much new for a different company. Yeah. So again, the subjectiveness of this evaluation, is it more incremental or more radically new, depends heavily on the subject that is evaluating that. The second nasty characteristic of innovation is its uncertainty and risk. So when you start working on an innovative product or innovative service, actually, well, in many cases, you're not really sure how much time and effort and money you will invest. You're not so sure about when you will actually introduce your product on the market. Yeah, so the time to market, you can't really predict this. Yeah, you are not always sure if your market will actually accept your innovation. Yeah, if customers will actually be willing to buy your new product. So it's not fully predictable. So you don't have any experiences from the past that you can extrapolate into the future, such as it is in many cases with existing products, where you are actually able to say, we were successful in this and that area in the last year. We had 20,000 units shipped. So actually in the next quarter, we will probably ship another 5,000 based on our experiences we gained in the past. So this is not really the case when going for innovation. You don't know how many units you will ship. You don't even know if you will have anything to ship at all, because also the project is not for sure be successful. And if you invest into something and probably fail with it, then this is something that we in business administration refer to as sunk costs. So where you created costs, you invested time, people's time, equipment, laboratory time, money into something, but if it fails, you never have the chance to earn it back. And this is what we refer to as sunk costs. And given this uncertainty in terms of, events, costs, time, market acceptance, and so on and so forth, and the investments we do at the same time into this innovation project, we refer to this as being a risky game. Yeah, so risk includes investments you make and uncertainty of success. The next characteristic, again, this is something very nasty, is the conflicts that are inherent in innovation activities. So if something is new and requires changes, then this causes a situation that actually might end up in conflicts. So think of it as customers that probably have to learn a new product, how to use it and how to install it and so on and so forth. And there is incompatibility with their existing knowledge. So there might be a conflict with your customers because they need to change their behavior. They need to expand need to expand their knowledge, and thereby might create some conflicts and create some resistance. Conflicts might also arise within the company. So, for instance, salespeople that are great in selling their products, they already know, and then you come up with a new product and say, well, please sales guys, sell this new product now. I know it's more complicated, but it has these and that features and benefits. So please sell this one now and not your existing products that you have sold for the last couple of years. And then they might provide some resistance because they know their customers. They know how to sell their existing products they have. And now they should sell something new, probably to somebody they didn't know before and know nothing about. So this kind of new situation might also create some internal conflicts that, in that example, the salespeople are actually against your product. They don't want to sell your innovation. There might be other conflicts within the companies as well, but that is just one example. Then innovation is complex. So you know from system sciences that actually complexity consists of two elements. The one that there are a lot of interrelated factors that depend from each other. And the second element is that these interrelations between the factors change over time so that they are dynamic. And this is also the case for innovation. So you have a lot of interrelated factors. So in innovation, this would be, for instance, you have a lot of different functional areas within your company required to work together. So people from marketing, from R&D, research and development, from sales, from controlling, from other areas, maybe even companies that are external to the firm. So actually open innovation partners, partners like universities or NGOs or even customers. Yeah. So there are a lot of different elements that are interconnected with each other, and all of them, all these different stakeholders, they have their own procedures, they have their own interests, they have and then you have the second element of complexity, which is that these dynamics change over time. So maybe there comes a new law or a new regulation from the government that actually changes all of everything that you have planned. Or there are shifts in customer perspective. So maybe they create an additional sense for privacy or maybe for safety or for things like that. And this changes their needs and this changes their behaviors from one day to the other. Or also within the company, there is a new CEO that comes in, and this new CEO sets the priorities totally different than they were before. So this might cause, again, all of these factors that are interrelated to change again. Yeah? And innovation is actually one of the most complex activities within the firm because of so many different internal and external stakeholders with all of their behaviors, interests, and knowledge bases need to come together to actually make an innovation project fly. And last but not least, the fifth characteristic of innovation is, and this is also not coming as a surprise because it was mentioned before, is its specific application or commercialization. That means that the invention needs to be brought to use within the company, for instance, with the manufacturing example we had before, or being launched as a new product on the market. Yeah, so it needs to deliver value and create value. Yeah, not necessarily only economic value, but it needs to provide some value to somebody. Yeah. So these are the characteristics of innovation that, and if you think a little bit about these routine activities that happen in companies, that these are characteristics that are very, very specific for innovation activities. Next, we need to have a look at what types of innovations are there. So first of all, we need to answer the question, what is new? So there are a lot of different ways we can be very creative and innovative. The most obvious ones, of course, is that we create new products. Yeah, products with new features, new functionalities that actually help the customers to get their job done better. Could also be services, of course. Yeah, so any kind of maintenance, sales services, whatever you can think of. And then we have product systems, so where these kind of products and services are bundled and brought to you together in a consistent way, and so that they are connected with each other and provide you a bigger value by being provided to you as a system. Just think about, all the consumer electronics companies. They don't try to sell you a product anymore, but try to get you to buy into an entire ecosystem. Yeah, no matter if it's Android or Amazon or Apple, all of them try to provide you an entire bundle of products and services. Then you can be very innovative in your core processes. So core processes mean that within the company, you have certain processes that are actually the ones that create the value. So this could be the sales process with the direct interaction with the customer to sell the product, or the manufacturing process where you actually create and manufacture and build the product and or service that you are providing. You can also be very innovative in your enabling processes. So these are those internal processes that support the operation of the firm. They don't create actual value in terms of this is the value that is finally delivered to the customer, but they support the internal interaction of the organizational members to work together more efficiently and effectively. So for instance, you can be very innovative in your enabling processes by creating a new knowledge management platform, so that you don't need to make failures, mistakes twice within your company, but people learn from others. Or you might be very creative in how people work together over distance. Yeah, and these kind of things. So through conference call systems, internal meeting structures, online platforms that allow more collaboration than just being together in a call, things like this. Then you can be very innovative in your channels, so in how the product is actually brought to the customer. So you can think about, well, can I maybe sell my product or service in a direct way without having any kind of intermediate partners such as retails or wholesales? Or can you go from a direct sale to an indirect sale to actually make use of the network that the wholesales and retails have for you? You can be innovative in whether you're providing your product exclusively, so through just very selected partners or even just your own stores, or the other end of the continuum in a ubiquitous way, meaning that you get your product everywhere you can imagine, at the gas station, and maybe there are even some vending machines and in the shops and so on and so forth. So you can be very innovative in how you actually bring your product to the customer by innovating your your sales channel. You can also be very innovative in your branding. Well, branding basically has the main objective that you position your company and or your product in a unique way, so that your customers perceive you differently compared to your competitors. Yeah, so because if you are not perceived differently than your competitors, what happens next is that you're just competing against price. Yeah, because there's nothing that differs you from your competition. And the only thing you can do is lower your price to be more attractive for your customers. However, if you manage to have a unique brand that is perceived very differently and hopefully positively by your customers, then you might be able to actually have a competitive advantage by creating a different picture of your company and your products in the minds of your customers. And you can be very creative in how you can do that. Yeah? Then you can go for a better customer experience. So innovate how your company interacts with your customers, or also the other way around, how your customers interact with you. So maybe think about an innovation in that area could be that, think about that you're a company that actually has a lot of own sales representatives in a store, like a mobile phone contractor, yeah, like providers such as Hutchinson 3 or A1 or Deutsche Telekom. And to interact with their customers, you actually, you wait until they come to your store or call your hotline. But you could be, one interesting innovative way to interact with your customers in a new way of customer experience would be that you provide a chatbot. Yeah, so that if you search for information on the website as a customer, you totally get lost on their websites. But the chatbot might help the customer to have a better interaction with the company by helping you or helping the customer to actually find the content they were searching for. So for those of you who actually don't know what a chatbot is, it's basically some kind of I don't want to call it artificial intelligence, but it's a smart intelligence where you have like in a chat box the possibility to write as a customer your question down in whatever way you want. So you say, I'm looking for a new contract that helps me to save my costs I have with the telecommunication. So the chatbot might then search for different tariffs and different models that are out there to help that are very cheap. Yeah. So actually the chatbot translates your request into a search string, goes through all the database materials and selects the one that might fit you best. And if it's too vague what you write in as a question, then the chatbot asks you, could you specify this? What are you looking for exactly? Is it A or is it B? And then you say, oh yeah, it's B. And then you click on that one, and then the chatbot then answers you, oh, okay, I see what you want. Is this the one contract that you're looking for? Could that be of interest for you? And if not, what else should I show you? So it's just some kind of a artificial communicator with you that makes the personal contact obsolete with the company. Then you have the business model. So you can be very creative in the business modeling. So meaning the business model, that's a whole other course, what business model innovation is about. But basically, if you have a business model innovation, you totally reconfigure how you create the value. So an entire way how you manufacture the product, what kind of partners you use, how the cost structure looks like. And at the same time, you are totally changing how you interact with the company, what the value actually is that you deliver, and how you create the revenues. So as a simple example, one business model innovation that is very famous is, of course, the shift of the coffee industry from like it is or was mainly before, with you bought some coffee, you had some kind of a coffee machine at home, and all of these were provided by different companies. And then Nespresso came, and they were not selling you a kilo of coffee anymore, but a portion. And they were also providing you through their partners like DeLonghi and others with very low price but high quality coffee machines. And you didn't, as a customer, not buy, so you didn't buy the coffee from the shops, you can just directly order it from Nespresso itself. And so actually, and there was a totally different revenue model as well, because you didn't buy a coffee, you bought capsules with just separate portions of a coffee. So they totally introduced a new business model and changed all the different elements of the business model, how the value was created and with whom together, as well as how it was charged, how it was brought to the customer, what the channel that was used, and thereby created a situation where the average coffee price increased by 800%, because they charge by portion and not by kilo of coffee anymore. Last but not least, you have the networks and alliance, and you can be very innovative there as well by partnering up with certain people, with certain institutions, with certain maybe even competitors, to actually gain additional market share and create innovations. So this is again one way where you can be very innovative. So the product and service innovation, that's very straightforward. But if we talk about innovation, we also need to consider all these other areas, because there are a lot of commodity products out there that actually will stay the same forever. But if you as a company want to enter this commodity market, you actually need to be very innovative in any of these other areas of innovation. And then you can still succeed in those markets. Next question is, where does innovation come from? Basically, there are two impulses that drive innovation. The first one is the so-called technology push, or the technology-driven innovation, which means that you as an inventor come up with a new technology, with a new solution, and then try to find what is the actual customer need that this solution solves and addresses. So you have a solution and now need to find the problem. And a lot of radical innovations actually work that way. So there is a new technology, and then you try to find what is the appropriate application area for customers where we can apply this new technology. The advantage of this approach is, of course, that if you are the first coming up with the technology, you have the time to actually put a lot of patents and other intellectual property right protections around that, so that once you're actually going on the market with a specific application, then your technology is protected and you can remain in a monopolistic situation that allows you to charge much more to the customer for a longer period of time. The disadvantage, of course, is the risk, because since you are having a solution but don't know if the customer actually has a problem and which problem, and if the customer is willing to pay for this new technology at all, it is more risky in terms of the market risk. Yeah, so you're not really sure if customers will accept your new technology. So this is again a little bit of a disadvantage of the technology-driven innovation approach. The other way is the market pull, meaning that basically the customer articulate you explicitly what their problem is, and then you start to try to find a solution for that problem. So in that case, the market need is known in the first place, and then you try to find this technological solution for that problem. The advantage, of course, is that the market risk is pretty low because, well, if the customer actually articulate their needs and you are aware of them, you also know, okay, what is the percentage of customers that have the problem? Oh, it's 60%. I see. And what specifically is the problem? Well, you can ask the customers and they tell you that. So there is pretty low market risk then. However, the problem is that you have the risk of maybe not even being able to resolve the problem from a technological point of view. So there is the technology risk, of course. And the second problem is that, well, since the customer is articulating the need, you are probably not the only company that actually becomes aware of that. So if the customer's needs are obvious or clearly articulated, also your competitors are working on that. So actually it requires you to be really, really fast on the market. Otherwise, your competition is actually winning the game. So the disadvantage is that actually all your competitors are also working on solving the customer's problem and thereby might run in first. And all your investments are then lost because actually you were not able to come up with a solution on time. So what is the better one? Is it technological push or market pull? Think about it. Well, the answer is both are relevant. Technological push innovations are more risky, but they have the potential to actually create a totally new market. On the other hand, you can't ignore the market at all, especially if you are already working in a specific market and customers come to you articulating their problem. You have to react on that. You have to actually do something. So the best approach is to have some kind of a balanced portfolio where there's a set of innovation activities that are more technological push orientated. And then you have another set of innovation projects that are more closely with their ear on the market and foster market pull innovations. In your materials, you also have these kind of main descriptions, potentials, and problems of both of these approaches listed out again, but this is basically what I have said before. The next thing that we need to be aware of is the degree of innovation. Since the degree of innovation is something that is perceived differently by different people, we require some kind of a framework that allows us to more objectively evaluate how innovative is something. One way to do so is the so-called Ansoff matrix. And it breaks the degree of innovation down to two main dimensions. The one is the market dimension. Is it addressing an existing market or a new market? So existing customers, existing problems, or a new customers or new problems they have. And the second dimension is the product or the technology. So is it an existing product, or is it a new product, or is it an existing technology that you use, or is it a new technology that you draw on? And based on these two dimensions, you have 4 quadrants. So the first one is the so-called market penetration or incremental innovation. So you basically address an existing market, customers that you know, with an existing product or existing technology that is just slightly better. You remove the bugs, you add a different color, you add a different ingredient, but do not really change basically the technology behind the product or the customer you're addressing with the product. Like you have aspirin and now add vitamin C to that. Yeah, it doesn't really change aspirin and you don't address a totally new customer base with it. And you still have your same aspirin. It's just a small additional ingredient that leverages the functionality of the product. The second one is the product development or technological innovation, meaning that you address an existing customer base with their existing problems with a new technology. So you have the same problem but a different solution to it. Yeah? Like you're able to produce genetically insulin for diabetes patients. Yeah, so you have the same patients, you have the same diabetes patients, and you have just a different technology how you produce the insulin. So it's a new product, a new technology on an existing customer base. Then you have the market development or market innovation, where you have an existing product or existing technologies that you now provide to a new market, to a new customer base, or to solve a different problem of your customers. So for instance, that you use aspirin, which is an existing product, but not for its original use to cure a headache or limit the headache, but now you use it for the infarct prophylaxis, yeah, because, well, during research they found out that actually aspirin is good for that too. So actually it's addressing a totally new problem. Yeah, it's the same technology, the same product used for curing or supporting a different problem. And the last but not least is the radical innovation or diversification, as Ansov call it, which is basically that you provide totally new technologies and products to totally new customers, yeah? Or you create even a new market with that. So the entire lifestyle medicine, for instance, is something that fits great into this category. And just with these two dimensions, we suddenly find out, okay, now we can describe how innovative something is better. Why is this relevant that we at least are able to describe based on the market and technology dimension how innovative our project is? Because the more innovative we are in one or both of these dimensions, the more risk is involved. Because if we draw on an existing technology, we have the technology under control, limited uncertainty there. And if we draw on existing customers that we know and that we have a profile for them, we know the market size, we know their purchasing power, and so on and so forth, then actually also the market risk is pretty low. And the opposite, if both the technology and the market dimension is new, both the technology and market related risks are much higher because we are not familiar with the uncertainty of the market. We are not familiar with the technology, how it will actually work out, and thereby are able to assess the risk involved with the innovation project better. Of course, in academia, we are not satisfied with just having these two broad dimensions. We try to break it down. So the product dimension, here referred to as the market and resources, is broken down even more to say, okay, well, how innovative we are in terms of the market. We require to consider not only our customers, but also if our sales approach is still valid or is it required a new sales approach, how we communicate with our customers, can we draw on our existing channels or do we need new ones, but also in terms of the market, the capital that we need to address this new market. Yeah, so are there heavy marketing costs involved because we have to create the market? Or is this our existing customer base that we already serve with market activities and don't require more market costs to invest there, and so on and so forth. The same for a technology where we have this broken down into the product technology, the manufacturing process technology. So can we manufacture that product in the production lines we already have or require a new one? And then we have a third category. And this third category didn't pop up before. So it refers to the internal structures of the organization. So it measures if this innovation project, if we try to get this through, if it requires the organization to develop a new formal organizational structure. So Is it required maybe to install an entire new business unit, with all what comes with it, with a new business unit leader, with an own staff, with own departments, and so on and so forth, and also the informal organization. So, does this innovation require the organization to adapt its culture and its social behavior within the company? So just think about a manufacturing company that enters the service business with much more customer interaction. This requires a huge cultural shift of the organization that has not considered the end customer as an interactional partner before, right? So it requires really a shift in the values and norms that the organization has. And this, let's say, more sophisticated framework allows a deeper assessment of the degree of innovation. So what you can see in these spider diagrams on the right, where you can see for each of these questions, you just make a simple point score and then can assess where and in which areas is this innovation project to be more or less innovative. So for the technological discontinuity, for instance, you can see that you need a new product technology, you require a new informal organization, you require a new formal organization, and also new production processes. However, you in that case address more or less an existing market. So it's still your same customers, which is F2. So you can see then very quickly where are the risk factors involved in that innovation project. It's clearly in the technological side, it's not the market. So it's a technology innovation. And so your main areas of risk you have to manage refer to the production technology, manufacturing technology, your structural areas in the firm, as well as the product technology itself. Why is this so important besides the risk factor? So the assessment of the degree of innovation is so relevant because risk with a radical innovation is not only perceived by you as a company, but also from the customer's point of view. So if a radical innovation is brought to the customer, you have to recognize that these kind of innovations are very complex for the customer, because radical innovation need to be explained. They don't fit into an existing product category that the customer already know. Maybe there is a very low compatibility in terms of, well, compatible to existing products, but also to existing knowledge that customers have. They need to learn. Maybe not compatible to existing behaviors of customers, that they have to change their behavior. Then radical innovations are also more difficult to communicate because it's a new product category, for instance, that customers are not familiar with. You can't follow a communication strategy like, this is a product like you know it from the last generation and we have added this and that feature. This is what you can't do with radical innovations, because actually there is no product category that you can refer your product to. So therefore it's very difficult to communicate. And sometimes it's even quite difficult to test and to try out your product, right, for the customer. And all of this results in higher risk perception of your radical innovation from the customer's point of view. So, and if people perceive more risk in general and have a feeling of uncertainty with respect to experiencing negative consequences when they buy your product, then this might cause your customers to, well, be very conservative in their decision to buy your product because they don't know it and know what to expect. So it requires people to learn, change their attitudes and behaviors, as well as all of these uncertainty factors. And limited trialability and compatibility cause your customers to require much longer to actually adopt your product, if at all. So radical innovations from a customer's perspective, you need always to consider that they are more risky and they're perceived worse from a customer's point of view, which results in a longer diffusion curve, meaning that it requires much longer until your product diffuses on the market, until everybody has one. Yeah? It takes much longer as opposed to incremental innovations. Also, as a company, you need to be aware of not only the significant investments that you make that are potentially lost, so the risk, but there are also other things. So you have to invest heavily into the new technology, into the market creation when it comes to radical innovation. And these projects, for some reason, they are not so straightforward. So it's not like a project definition and a timeline, and then 6 months later, the finished new product is delivered. These kind of radical innovation projects in the organization typically are characterized by being very long, so really taking 10, 15 years even. And most of them have a lot of stops and revivals. So there's somebody who drives this and then they exit the company, and then it's this radical innovation project is on the shelf for a couple of years until a new CEO comes in and revives it and prolongs it then further. So it's not so straightforward planned. The uncertainty is clear with respect to the technology, but also with respect to the market, and also with respect to corporations. So typically, if a company engages in radical innovation projects, this requires a lot of partners. Yeah, universities, even competitors, other companies in other different parts of the value chain, maybe suppliers, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of different external partners involved, more so than in incremental innovation projects. Another important factor is that radical innovations sometimes have the potential to cannibalize prior investments. So meaning that a company invests into certain areas, builds a certain manufacturing hall, builds a certain organization around the product, and then there comes a radical new product that makes all of these prior investments obsolete. Yeah. And if you as a company don't have this willingness to cannibalize, radical innovation is not going to happen. So you need to be willing to cannibalize your own existing products, revenue streams, organizational routines to actually succeed in radical innovations. So maybe just as an example, just think about Kodak, you know them, the company that produced film. Yeah, this was the time where we made photos on a chemical processed film. And then the digital camera technology came, and they were not willing to cannibalize their prior investments and got stuck with their existing old, outdated technology of chemical film. And in the meantime, they are bankrupt. Nobody is making really use of chemical film for making photos anymore at all. So actually, it's really a sad story. What makes this story even more sad is that the basic patents for digital photography were actually filed and created at Kodak. So the company was not willing to cannibalize its, at that time, really tremendous revenues and technologies for this new digital camera technology, and left this to their competitors and finally made themselves obsolete. So despite of their invention power to come up with that, the business decision to not cannibalize the existing business ran them into bankruptcy. Last but not least, radical innovations also hold some good things for the company as well, because if you succeed in radical innovation, you can actually change the competitive landscape. So you can break with existing market entry barriers. So every established player that is around there might really start to struggle because you, with your new technology, you just surpass them. Yeah, the competitive technologies, there's high uncertainty regarding competitive technologies. So this means that in the time we will come to that when talking about the strategy, but in times of a huge technological progress, usually there is not only one but different variants of the technology competing for each other. Who is going to become the next leading dominant technology? So digital photography, we had different technologies. And one finally made it and the others dropped out. So these kind of new technologies, these breakthroughs, they allow the company to probably reposition itself in the entire industry, which might be good or bad, depending if you are the one that is actually succeeding in implementing the technology or not. And you have a longer diffusion on the market. We've mentioned that. So radical innovations, if you as a company try to approach that, you should prepare yourself that when entering the market, your products, your radical new products will not fly off the shelves. It will require a longer period of time until your product diffuses on the market. So to bring this subjectiveness of innovation in a simple example, let's have a look at this small graph that has on the x-axis the technological innovativeness, so from a technological perspective, how new is it, and the customer value created with it on the y-axis. So let's have a look. So you remember maybe there was an old technology called VHS to record, your favorite series on the telly. And the shift from VHS to DVD technological wise, was tremendous. Yeah, so it was a totally new platform. Everything that was there before was obsolete. DVD and VHS is nothing comparable from a technological point of view. However, if you have the customer value in mind, well, actually the shift from VHS to DVD was not that big. Well, you could record your favorite series before, just a little bit better quality it was quite a shift. Yeah, it was a better quality, but the basic need was more or less the same. Yeah, so it's recording your stuff on the telly that you want to build your archive. And you can do the same with DVD and VHS. So the customer value additionally created was not that big, despite all the additional revenues created. However, a second example would be that you have on the computer, you had the first MP3 codecs were installed, so you could compress your music files and could actually make them very small without losing too much quality, but required to do that on your computer. And then somebody came to had the idea and invented a telephone, a cell phone, where you could actually also play your MP3. So that had the codec and the player integrated, and thereby made it possible for you to listen to the music while on the go. So from a technological perspective, programming the codec, working on a computer to refine it so that it actually works on a cell phone, technological wise, this was not really a big step. A cell phone is basically a computer. Yeah. However, from the customer perspective, the additional value created was tremendously. So meaning that now you were not only able to listen to your music on the computer, but you had your cell phone with you all the time, and now you could use it and listen to your music all the time while on the go. So from additional value created for the customer, this was a huge step. So this example should show you that the differentiation between the market and the technological perspective is really crucial, because it helps you to better see what is the market potential, but also the potential market barriers, as well as seeing what from a technological point of view is required. So now some examples for you. You could solve yourself when you're actually sitting in front of your computer or tablet and watching the videos, or put on hold or on pause after each of these examples, and try to answer for each of the following examples. Actually, what do you think, where did this innovation come from? So was it more technological driven, or was this market driven? Answer yourself the question, what is actually new in that? So is it the brand, the product, the business model, the network? Is it the service that is new? Then new for whom? New to the customer, new to the company, and actually how new? So is it just a variation of what is already out there, or is it radically new? And you might consider, is it new in terms of how new is it in terms of the market, and how new is it in terms of the technology. So the first example would be Uber. You have two icons there. The one is maybe the one you know from driving around with Uber as a passenger, and the other one is the app that you use when you are a driver. So put on hold and answer yourself the question, where did it come from? What is new? For whom is it new? How new is it? So the next one would be that. So you probably know this. This is this Pokemon Go. So the very famous game transferred to a VR experience that you could consume on your smartphone, that peaked a couple of years ago. Again, ask yourself, what is new? How new is it? Was it rather pull or push? And was it new for which market? So again, put on hold, answer the questions for yourself. You've probably seen that as well. So the newly introduced self-cash out systems that you can see in all the supermarkets. So you don't need to go to the counter and somebody scans your materials and products that you buy, and then you pay, but that you have a self-service where you scan your products yourself and make all your payments using your credit card or cash in a vending machine. So again, ask for yourself, was it rather pull or push? What is new? New for which market? How new is it? This is another interesting concept. If you're not familiar with that, just Google it. It's Amazon Go. It's a grocery store concept that is actually introduced by Amazon. So physical stores where you can buy a huge variety of products, that basically works without a public cash out. So meaning that you go in there, you're monitored by hundreds of cameras, you pick the products that you want, the cameras track that, and then after you have collected all the products that you want to buy, you just leave the store, because they have identified you. They know what kind of products you picked from the shelves based on their camera systems. And then you can leave because they have everything they need. They know what you bought, they know who you are, they know your credit card information so that they can balance you. And so it's a shopping experience differently compared to what we know today, when still having to buy something and have some kind of a payment stop before leaving the shops. So have a look at that if you don't know it, and then answer yourself the questions again. Is it market driven or technology driven? What is new? New for which market? And how new is it? This is an interesting concept. So you're probably familiar with Red Bull, but the one on the right side you probably don't know. So there was a nice idea that a farmer in Germany had. So pickles, and in Germany it's and also in Austria it's very popular to have a pickle for lunch or for whenever you eat something. So these small pickles, well, if you don't farm them at the right time, they get too big. And then usually you can't really sell them anymore. So therefore you have to, they're only usable to feed animals anymore. And this farmer came to the idea and said, well, I don't want to sell my pickles that I have to farmers for animal farms to feed them, because the price is very low on that. Is it maybe possible that we make some kind of a healthy snack out of that? And this is exactly what they have done. So this farmer, he made this can, and in this can you can find a big pickle, and you can open it, and it's sold through vending machines on the highway, so that people, when they stop to take a short break when on the go, then they can go to the vending machine and can get themselves this healthy snack. So doesn't matter if you would be a potential customers, but this concept was successful for a couple of years. And there's certainly a demographic and a population that is keen on this kind of snack, as the numbers showed. And so think of yourself again, was it more market pull? So did people ask for that, or was it a technological push so that the solution was there before the need? What was new? Was it new for whom was it new, and how new was it? This is another concept of a farmer that actually, these farmers that actually sell their products directly from home. So you can go to these farmers directly and buy their stuff that they produce there. However, that's quite a pain. It's very inconvenient for the customer, because they have to drive to the farmer to get their products. So what this farmer did was very innovative. He said, well, let's buy a container and put this container in between two large towns, or at least two villages where you have a couple of customers, and put in there all the products in this container that we have. Some of them are in a fridge, others you can just take off. And there is nobody there. So it's open 24 hours, it's open 7 days a week. And every customer who wants to buy a product directly from the farmer now doesn't need to go to this farmer, but can drive to this container, take out the products that he wants or she wants. And then there is a small box and a calculator where the customers themselves calculate what is the price for the products that I want to take with me. So there's nobody there, there's no observation, there is no camera, and there's also the farmer himself is not there to sell the products. It's just take it and pay for it. It's based on trust. One has to say, that risk is rather limited. So even if there is somebody who takes the product and doesn't pay for it, it doesn't mean bankruptcy for the farmer. But basically, the huge majority of people actually pay, and some even pay more of what they should pay. So it's a self-service that it doesn't require any human resources to be there all the time to sell the product, and it's more convenient for people because it's open 24/7, 7 days a week, to actually get the products that the customer wants to have. So again, think, is this pull or push? Is it, what is new? How new is it? What kind of type of innovation is that? As the last example, you have here the My Acker. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. If not, then just Google it. It's really interesting. It's basically a mixture of online and offline farming, so that you as a customer have the opportunity to actually grow your own vegetables, but without requiring you to be on the field and working. You have an app in which you have your small garden, and you can select what kind of vegetables you want to grow. You can also select over time what kind of, let's say, support you want to give your growing vegetables. So if you want to give them some water, or I don't know, whatever you do when you're farming, yeah. And so this is everything you can do through your app. And in the background, the people and the staff of My Acker, they're actually executing on a real life field what you want them to do. So if you say, I want to have, I don't know, additional water for my carrots twice a day, you just put it into your platform, and they are going on the field putting these 2 cans of water on your carrots. Yeah, you also have some sensors that tell you how dry or what kind of weather conditions you have. And you can also tell the team at My Acker through the app actually to collect all your vegetables once they are ripe, and then they put it into a box and send you your own vegetables by postal mail. So you are gardening, but not on a real garden, but on your app in a virtual garden, and everything that you do there is translated into action in real world. So, and you pay a small fee and can grow your own vegetables. So again, answer the question, what is new? Is it pull or push? What is new? For whom is it new? And how new is it? So the next question we need to answer is, what is the relationship between innovation and firm performance? So if you succeed in innovation, does this actually really pay off? So first of all, we need to consider what is the success rate of innovation projects. And this is a little bit of a downer. As you can see, there are a lot of ideas that come in, so almost 2,000 ideas, and almost 80 of them do not even make it to the next step of being rough projects. Of these 20% that make it to rough projects, only half of them really become some kind of a product. Out of this, only 30% is actually on the market after a year. And out of those that are still on the market, even a smaller percentage is really successful. So this means that you require a lot of ideas, and only a few of them is going to make us money as a company. I know this is really a downer, and this is exactly the reason why not everybody is made for innovation activities. On the other hand, these kind of success rates that are somewhere between 1 and 5% of innovation activities, you have to consider you really start here with the original embryonic ideas, so a sentence on a post-it. So this is the starting point. And of course, the more you learn over the course of the project, the more likely it becomes that you learn something that might kill your idea. Yeah, you have a great idea, but then the first time you talk to a customer, you see, oh, well, they don't want that. And then one idea is gone. And then you have another idea that you drive to the next stage. And then during your initial research, you already find out, we don't get this from a technological point of view. So you kill that idea too. And then you have another idea that is fantastic and you really develop it down. But you come to the point, well, this product will actually be very expensive. So nobody will buy that and we will not make any money out of that. So the third, and that's the third idea gone. So this is exactly what we want. We want this kind of a funnel. We want to have a lot of ideas and then filter out step by step in a structured process what the idea is that we finally can realize into a successful product. So the next question would be, well, maybe we should just focus on those ideas that are radically new. Maybe they are more successful and skip this incremental stuff. Well, and there are a lot of researchers that had the same thinking and said, okay, let's study that. And what you can see, there are a lot of studies over the last 2-3 decades that try to find out, is more innovativeness of the project related to more success of the project. So, and for all you can find all kind of results. Some find a positive relationship, others a negative one. Some find some kind of U-shaped or inverse U-shaped relationship between the degree of innovation of the project and its performance. Some find no relationship. So we can conclude that, well, the results from research about this relationship is actually, they are inconclusive. We can't say for sure that more innovativeness comes along with more success. So why is this the case? And there is an interesting study. This interesting study comes from Calantone and colleagues. They tried to figure out what is the reason why there might be not a direct relationship between project success and the degree of innovation. So have a look at this model here. So forget about the technological synergy and the distribution synergy for now. Just focus on the product innovativeness and the constructs on the right side. So this means what they found out is that product innovativeness, so the more innovative the new product is, the more customers perceive a product advantage with it, indicated by this positive coefficient. So more innovativeness means more product advantage, which in turn is also positively related to the profitability of this new product. So actually, product innovativeness has a positive effect on the profitability by increasing the perceived product advantage. However, there is also a negative secondary effect. By being more innovative, the product causes that customers are less familiar with it. They don't have a box they could put this innovation into, and thereby are very, they, like what we said before, they perceive more risk with it. They are not familiar with it. They have to learn. So therefore, they are not so keen on putting on with this radical innovation right away. So you can see that higher product innovativeness is negatively related with the customer familiarity, indicated by this negative coefficient, and customer familiarity is positive related with the profitability. So the more familiar people are with the product, the more profitable it gets. But the customer familiarity is hampered by a higher product innovativeness. So this is a nice explanation for all of these inconsistent research results in the past, that you have this positive effect of a new product creating a higher product advantage, but actually causing customers to not be familiar with it, and therefore they reject it. Yeah, and not sometimes the one is bigger and sometimes the other is bigger, and this decides if more radically innovative products are successful or not. So be aware of that, because if you know this, you can do your homework. So this means that in your innovation process, you can think about marketing measures or even the product design of your radical new product. What can you do to make things look like something that the customer might also relate to increase the perceived customer familiarity despite the innovativeness? Yeah. So if you address it like that, you might reduce this negative secondary effect of a higher innovativeness through the customer familiarity. So one could say, should we then skip the radical innovation activities at all? And the clear answer is no, because if we take a portfolio perspective, meaning that we have a look at all innovation projects going on in a company, based on one empirical study of Kim and Morborn, they found out that on average about 86% of all the innovation projects going on in a company are more incremental in nature. Yeah, so not so new in terms of market and technology, and only a small proportion, 14% in their investigation, were actually radical. But if you have a look at how successful they were, the picture gets a little bit different. So although there were just 14% of all projects radical in nature, almost 40% of the revenue was coming from these radical innovation projects. So their contribution to create additional revenue was much bigger than the innovations that are more incremental. And the picture gets even more extreme if you have a look at the profitability. You can see that although just 14% of the innovation projects were radical in nature, they accounted for almost, well, more than 60% of the entire profits generated. Because, as you remember, radical innovations, they have the potential to create these new markets, and when you have a monopolistic situation and intellectual property that protects your radical innovation from competition, then of course you can also charge a higher price. So therefore, it is easy to understand that actually radical innovations are necessary because they are the drivers of revenue growth and profitability in your future business. So again, the answer is not should we go for radical innovation or incremental innovation. The question should be, what is the proportion of the two? But we need to balance it. We need both. We need incremental innovations to extend our existing products in their life cycle, but we also need these radical innovations that actually provide us with the future of the company. So summarizing this chapter about the relationship between innovation and success, we do not find any kind of support for the notion at the project level that more innovativeness comes along with more success. However, we can say that the higher innovativeness of the innovation product portfolio, so all of the projects that are going on, correlates with a higher firm success. So obviously, being innovative has a positive performance impact. The question is, how can we achieve this innovation success? Which is what we cover in this small chapter, just to have a look at what are the main drivers. So one argument that you hear many times in a lot of companies is, particularly if they are smaller, they say, oh, well, this innovative stuff here, this is so expensive, and this is really just something for the big companies. So the bigger the companies are, they should be the ones that innovate, and because they're the only one that can afford that. So if this argumentation would be true, this would mean that the more money you invest into your R&D, the more successful you are. So have a look at this graph here. So on the x-axis here, you have the R&D to sales ratio, 1, 2%, 3%, 4%, and so on. Meaning, what is the percentage of your sales, of your revenue, that you actually reinvest into R&D. This is something you can read in almost all public records of companies. So actually, if the hypothesis I've mentioned before from these smaller companies would be true, this would mean that the more you invest into R&D, so the higher the percentage of the revenue that you have is reinvested into your research and development, the more sales growth, so as an indicator of success, you will have. And if this hypothesis is true, all of these dots should go from the left down to the upper right corner, right? However, as you can see, each of these dots represents one company, that there is no tendency like that. It's rather the opposite, or it seems to be no relationship between the R&D ratio and the sales growth. Yeah, some just invest 1% and have 80% sales growth coming from innovation, and others present 6% and have, well, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 or even a negative sales growth. Yeah, so actually the argument more money means more innovation success does not really hold. So obviously it should be other factors that drive the innovation success. And well, we have done a lot of research on that ourselves, and of course there are other researchers as well. And what we could find out is that one of the main drivers is how proficient you as a company are in your innovation process. So you can see there again, and this kind of graph where you have on the x-axis, you have how proficient are your innovation process. So how many activities do you do, or is it everything just on the fly? Yeah, so the more points you get here, the more sophisticated your innovation process is. And below this very high level construct of proficiency in innovation process, you should know that we asked companies about 200 items, 200 questions to actually get a picture of how proficient they are in their innovation activities. And on the y-axis, you can see the firm performance, calculated as the firm performance in terms of how do the innovation activities contribute to market share, revenue growth, profitability, and net present value. So really hardcore economic performance metrics. The higher, the better, of course. And what you can see there, each of these dots represents one company. What you can see there that actually this kind of pattern, that these points go rather from the left down to the upper right corner. So meaning the more proficient you are in the innovation process, the higher the firm performance gets. So obviously, the key to success is having a sophisticated innovation process, activities, and tools in place to ensure that your invention becomes an innovation. The second factor Yeah, and what does it mean, proficiency innovation process? To have a good front-end process, so the early activities of identifying customer needs and specifying a good concept. These are particular instruments that you get to know later on in this course. Then you have the development activities, building a prototype and so on and so forth. And finally, your launch activities. What do you do to help your customers to buy the product? Besides the innovation process proficiency, there is another one, which is actually the innovation system. Again, we asked people in companies about 200 questions about how do they organize the innovation system. Innovation system means, for instance, the strategy. Do they have a clear strategy outlined for their innovation activities? Do they have an innovation-friendly climate in terms of, we support and encourage innovation, and there's a climate of psychological safety, so failures are allowed, and so on and so forth. And then again, we captured what is the relationship between the proficiency of these innovation system variables and firm performance. Same metric here as we had before. And what you can see there again is that you have these dots going from the left down side to the upper right corner, meaning that the more proficient you are in your innovation system, the more performance you can achieve. So actually the secret sauce of innovation success seems to be embedded in having a proficient innovation process and a fantastic innovation-friendly innovation system. And in the following chapters, we are then looking at how we can organize this formal innovation process as well as this system level to actually achieve this innovation success.